Good morning, almost afternoon to all of you at the Citizens Voice team. I'm really honored to be able to be here with you and do this editorial board meeting. And of course, I'm extremely honored to be on the ballot for November 2nd, running for county judge in the Court of Common Pleas. So that's an extreme honor for me, just to be able to be on the ballot as one of the choices for the voters. So to the voters out there, my entire life has been about public service and trying to help others. And I've worked for over a decade. For 10 years, I was on the Judiciary Committee. I worked on some very important legislation with human trafficking and giving a voice to victims. We defined human trafficking, years ago. No one knew what that even was. And victims were being punished many times. So I worked with the Senate to change the laws on human trafficking. So most of my focus has been for voiceless children, foster children, and for victims. And I've really enjoyed that work, writing the criminal code. And now I've also been a lawyer. I do a lot of pro bono work for families that can't afford legal representation in Schuylkill County, Carbon County, and Luzerne. I've done a lot of juvenile work. And most recently in the legislature, I was on the Juvenile Justice Task Force. So now I'm attempting to make that leap from the legislative branch to the judicial branch. There are many parallels and many qualities that I have as a person and as a hard worker that will benefit the bench. And I think I will be an asset to the Luzerne County bench. So that's part of why I'm running. That's a small part of why I'm running for the Luzerne County bench. Okay. I can keep on going if you want, Dave, whatever you'd like.
Well, let's jump in with a couple of questions. I think one of your opponents in the race is billing herself as the only judge running for judge. Stephanie Salavantis obviously has been district attorney for almost a decade, and you obviously have courtroom experience, especially in family court matters. But how do you answer that? Their kind of take on the race, that they have more experience in the courtroom than you do?
So first off, it's been a lovely race, and it's very exciting that there are 3 women. So whatever the voters decide, you're going to get 2 women, which is going to give us equivalency on the bench, that we will have an equal number of men and women on the Luzerne County bench. That's going to be unprecedented. And really, in judicial races, there really are no opponents. We're all just running on our own merits and our own experiences. And I have a wonderful impression of both of the other women that are running, both of the candidates. So with that, and I wish everyone the best. So with that being said, the work that I do every day in the legislature, I represent 65,000 people. So 65,000 constituents. And then in redistricting, I lost some of that constituency, but they still continued to come to my office. So every day we advocate for seniors. We help with PennDOT matters, transportation matters, issues that can be very difficult, healthcare. And so I've had to learn a lot. My job has been about learning. In the state legislator, being a state legislator, you have to be a jack of all trades. So you have to know about education law. You have to know about the new mandates that the governor is putting out during COVID. I created the COVID-19 response team in Southern Luzerne County with the Greater Hazleton Chamber, and we worked on those issues to protect our citizens. And then I even worked up until getting vaccinations for my industrial workers because they were the first ones hit. So those constituents, that's 65,000 constituents that I work on those cases. And then on the side, I've still always maintained a pro bono practice. I've gone to Philadelphia Immigration Court for families that are looking for a legal pathway to citizenship. I've also worked a lot with adoption and foster care. So really all I can do is speak to my own experience. And I know that as a judge, I will no longer be the advocate, but I will have, say, two advocates coming before me, and I will be non biased. I will listen to the arguments on both sides. If there's a way to make agreement and settlement, then that will be done in my courtroom. And I know that I'm a very fair person. I'm a very diplomatic person, which sometimes makes it hard to be in politics because I do look for agreement and I do look for diplomacy. And I think that's just a big part of who I am. And I think that would be positive in many cases, especially in family court cases.
You mentioned the fact that this will, whoever wins, give us 5 female judges, 5 male judges. Do you think there's perhaps a difference in the way women might approach the job than men do?
No, I think there's a difference in the way people themselves approach the job, based upon their experience, based upon courtroom experience, based upon what you've spent your life advocating for, based upon being charitable and involved in the community. And I know that the person that I am, it's been a life of public service and a life of trying to help others. And at this point, Judge Vogue, the president judge, he has the authority, and he declared that both judicial nominees, both that are elected, they will then both go to assist Judge Jennifer Rogers in family court because of COVID, the cases are so overwhelming. There was a huge backlog of cases for about a year. Many cases were suspended. The courtroom had to close. Many of the courtrooms closed, and there was a backlog of cases. So you have that. And then you have a rise in domestic abuse. You have a rise in alcohol abuse, substance abuse, not just opioid abuse, but drug abuse. And that's been impacting families. So all of those cases, the juvenile cases, as well as PFAs, they're all going to end up in family court. So both newly elected judges are going to go to assist Judge Rogers in family court. I know, they send you to judges school. And I've worked on the civil side. I was a law clerk for Judge Joseph Musto, which I was very proud of. He was he's still an attorney today. And he had a vast array of knowledge. So from the civil side, I really enjoyed the civil side too. So I'm all about hard work. So if I'm doing family court in the morning and then someone needs us to pick up guilty pleas or do a civil case, I will learn what I have to learn. I will work as hard as I have to work, and I'll be available. So I have a very diverse background, and I'm proud of that. And I think I will be an asset to the bench.
As someone who's been very active in family law and represented families in various courts, I'd just be interested in any reaction you might have to what's been going on at Luzerne County Children and Youth Services. And we saw the former executive director plead guilty yesterday to obstruction of justice and failing to follow up on hundreds of tips. Can you address that?
Yes. So what I did as a state representative in response to that, I did write to Attorney General Josh Shapiro requesting an itemization of those cases so we could make sure that those children do not fall through the cracks. I think that's huge for us. So say there's 200 cases of children, 230 cases of children. We want to know where did those children go and what are the outcomes? Some of the cases that were outlined in the media are extremely disturbing, and it's very sad. And unfortunately, we need a larger fix to what is going on in children and youth. So what's happening in children and youth? We cannot be the only county that's having a lack of follow-up on cases. I know there were meetings in discussion all across the state of Pennsylvania with concerns about dropped cases or cases that are not followed up on, and making sure above all that these children are safe. So the obviously caseworker complement has always been a problem. I just spoke with someone yesterday that they were on over a decade ago, they had been on the Children and Youth Advisory Board. Back then, we had trouble getting caseworkers. So now, the number of caseworkers that you have for a child, that's boots on the ground work. They have to go into homes. They have to check on these children, sometimes in extremely, deplorable conditions and terrible conditions that these kids are in. And I've worked very hard to try to advocate to get people to try to become foster parents. I actually met someone yesterday that was considering becoming a foster parent. And they said, well, maybe I'm too old and I'm single. And I said, no, like, please call Luzerne County Children and Youth. Please try to sign up to be a foster parent. Because there's children out there that need homes and there's not enough caseworkers. And so as long as you have those two huge human services issues, the children are always going to suffer with that. And I was looking at a solution, and maybe this would be for the legislature at some point. But another solution would be how teachers, out of 9 months out of the year, they're teaching and they're coming in contact with these same children, usually. And they're the mandated reporters that report these children to Childline, because they see that there's abuse or neglect, or they are directly told by a child that they're being abused. So teachers are coming in contact with those same children. And teachers have very stressful jobs. Now they have to make sure children are fed, children are clothed, and that they deal with the nursing perspective in schools. So I think that caseworkers really have to be, it has to be a lifetime job, just like how teaching is. And there has to be breaks, maybe even how teachers have a time period where they, after nine months of teaching, then they have 3 months to reboot and redo their schooling, redo their coordination of what they're going to be teaching children. So I think that maybe there's some sort of solution there, just even in the way caseworkers have such a high burnout rate. They work and then they go in with good intentions, and then they see how bad it is and they can't do it anymore, and they leave and they'll go to a different department in the county, or they'll leave human services altogether.
I don't want to monopolize all the questions. Buff, you
the legislature's been spending a lot of time this year on election integrity issues. Do you have any concerns about the upcoming election regarding election integrity?
No, I think our biggest problem with elections is adequate training. So also, obviously it's concerning to me that 2 staffers have just left, one with how they were locked up, or they weren't locked up, how the voting machines, that there was a protocol breached there. I mean, obviously that's concerning. It's concerning that the head of all of elections is left with, I don't even know if it was 30 days prior to an election. But I think the number one issue with elections that I've seen is that if you do a job only twice a year, if you only were a reporter 2 days out of the year, it might be, maybe that's not a good example, but say you're a teacher and you only teach 2 days out of the year, it's really hard to be good at something that you only do 2 days a year. So I think that training is key and repetition is key, because right now they're going to have to do triage during the election, and they're going to have to take employees from all different departments in the county and have them work the election. And many times the poll workers that are inside, they only do it twice a year at the primary and the general, and you don't always have that much training. And you can go to one person and get one answer and go to another and get another answer. So one thing that was troubling for the election. So they're more localized issues. In the last election, if you have a mail-in ballot and you don't want to use the mail-in ballot and you want to vote in person, you're going to have to vote with a provisional. And there was one polling place that all day long they accepted mail-in ballots. So problems like that, I mean, problems with the mail-in ballot, those are issues that I think the legislature really needed to have solutions with. And we obviously didn't come to those. I know the legislation was vetoed by Governor Wolf, but when mail-in ballots became law, there was never, it was always thought, people like to vote in person. They're going to vote in person. Nobody's going to request a mail-in ballot, then get one, fill it out, send it back. No one's going to go through that process. People like to vote in person. And there was never an intention or a thought, there was never the foresight to think that just months after that legislation was passed, that there would be a global pandemic. So I think, you have to evolve with the way that things are going. And I know a lot of people that are happy with the mail-in ballots, and they're using them. And we're hoping that they use them because this is going to be a low turnout election. And we're hoping that people engage. And there's 3 candidates, and we're hoping that they engage and they come out and they vote. That's one way to do it.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're campaigning, how much money you've raised? Are you taking money from lawyers?
So I have had donations from every discipline. Let me see. I couldn't see you for a second. There we go. That's better. Sorry about that. I've had donations from every discipline, attorneys, doctors, anyone you could think of. And those donations go to the campaign for Toohil for judge. So I'm obviously, elections are very costly. To go up on television is extremely costly. So I think I have the least amount of money. And I think last time I'm probably going to end up spending the least amount of money, but I'm hoping that because it's grassroots, that we're getting a lot of word out there. We're getting the message out there. I obviously have made a name for myself in my work that I've done for families. And I'm very proud and honored to have been able to do that work. And so folks know that, but it does take some explaining. My constituency here in Southern Luzerne County has been really, a little hesitant to see me move to a different branch. So I do have some of my own constituents that say, we're not voting for you. We're keeping you as state representative. And then I have other constituents that are saying that they're voting, but it's with reservation and they're concerned. They don't know who the next state representative would be. And that's really a testament to those 65,000 constituents and the work that I'm able to do for the 65,000 constituents.
Okay.
So we'll see how it goes. Because if my own district, the turnout was poor last time, and then I do have a couple voters. They tell me right to my face they're keeping me as state representative. So we'll see. I'm hoping that they will entrust me with what I'm passionate about and let me focus on the law and let me focus on families and case by case in front of me, rather than the jack of all trades, the expert of everything that you have to be when you're a state legislator. So we'll see.
Are you doing anything differently for this campaign as opposed to the primary campaign?
Oh, I thought you were going to say like from a legislative one. I'm like, yes, I have to traverse the entire county back and forth. That's a big county. I have really good helpers. I'm really blessed with a big team of helpers. So we are trying to make sure that the Latino population is registered and that they are engaged and they're excited about this election. Unfortunately, we had a lot of Latinos running in the it was wonderful. We had a lot of Latinos running in May, and then we just weren't able to get out the vote. So there were two Latinas, one in West Hazleton and one in Hazleton, that were able to make it to the general election. But we've never had an elected official in our area that is Hispanic, and we're 90% Hispanic in the Hazleton area. So I'm really working on trying to get them excited. They got really excited about the presidential election. The Latino population was really engaged, but then in May, not so much. So that outreach, I try to translate everything we have and be communicative, because they have the same question as the, in English and in Spanish. I've gotten asked, is the governor going to appoint someone? My district's very conservative. Even the Democrats are pretty conservative. So they wanted to know, is Governor Wolf going to appoint a state representative? That's not the case. If I would become judge for 2 months, my office functions. The leadership is able to keep my employees working so they can still work on those 65,000 cases for those constituents. And then what happens is then there's a special election. So it's just been a lot of explaining. I think we're trying to explain as much as we can and get our message out. So that's important. And anyone can contact me if they have questions. And I'm just grateful to have the forum to be able to let the voters meet us and help them in making their choice.
With the pandemic over the last 18 or so months, I'm sure that's altered, how you do business as a legislator. Obviously, it's altered how we do business too. But in interviewing the judges running for retention, there's been a lot of changes as far as the use of technology, telephone meetings, stream meetings like this one. How do you see that being kind of integrated into how you would operate as a judge if you win in November?
I think it's very important. I have done adoptions via Zoom. I think that it's important, especially with hearings for folks with their job, that you're able. I know a lot of judges during COVID that we had this telework capability, but that will be a decision county by county on what is going to be allowed. And then, of course, I think the AOPC is going to weigh in on that. And I think technology can have its pros and its cons. And I would be able, obviously, my colleagues that are running for retention, that are attorneys, but that are currently judges, those judges, I would love to have a further discussion with them about it and see what they've thought worked and what they have found to not work. But being in a courtroom, I think in person is really important. And sometimes it helps with the communication aspect. It helps with understanding the gravity of the situation. I think if you're in criminal court, the gravity of the situation. And then even with an adoption, it's far more special when someone is getting, it's like a marriage. So it's like getting married on Zoom. I think it would be a lot better to be in the grand courthouse, a beautiful historic building, and be there in front of a judge. I do think that is priceless. The venue of that beautiful courthouse is priceless. So I think that we're going to be headed back to in person as much as we can, for sure.